Thank you, Catherine. And before I start, thank you for your service. I can't tell you how much that means to all of us. I grew up in the Vietnam era. Looking across the room, I see some gray hair. I know some of you did as well. And when our soldiers came back from Vietnam, they weren't welcome the way they are today. And I appreciate the Americans' attitude towards our military and our service. It's so important. It's why this country exists. It's why we have the life that we live. Freedom. Exactly right. I'm going to talk to you today about a couple things, principally about the moratorium. But as I talk, I'd like you to think about the old cliche of seeing the forest through the trees. Understand the difference between the big picture that we really need to step back and look at versus some of the little things that we really get focused on, and that's where a lot of the attention goes. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about who independents are. I'm going to talk about the moratorium, how it got started, what are some of the impacts. There's a handout with some of the statistics on it. I'll just highlight a few of them, but more of them are in that handout for your information. If I have time, I'm going to talk a little bit about energy today and energy supply and what we view as an American treasure, natural gas. The United States has the largest supply of natural gas in the world. It can power us for well over 100 years. I want to talk a little bit about some of the energy policy issues that confront us today. I know Congressman Brady is going to get into more of that detail, so I won't get too deep into that. And then I want to talk a little bit about, to help you understand the economic benefits and the importance of energy to our way of life and to our national security. Before I do that, I want to tell a story. And it's a story that probably many of you have heard. I've actually heard a couple of different versions of it. But it's a good story to make a good point that I hope will also help you think about seeing the forest through the trees. It's about a college professor who wanted to make a point to his class. And as he walked in, he had a couple hundred students in the classroom. And they all kind of sat up there, some in the front row, perky and interested, others in the back rows, slouched back there because they had to be. And he had a table in front of him with nothing on it. And all of a sudden, underneath the table, he reaches down and he pulls out this big glass container with a narrow neck on it. And he reaches down again and pulls out another container, kind of a bucket, full of these big rocks. And he takes these rocks and places them one by one through the neck of this container and fill it up. When it was full, he asked the class, "Well, is the container full?" And they said, "Yes, sir, it is." "No, it's not full yet." He reached down under the counter and pulled out another container. This was a lot of smaller pebbles in it. And he took that container and started pouring the pebbles into the glass beacon until it was full with the little, shook it around a little bit, wiped off the excess pebbles, and now the glass container was full. So he asked his class, "Is it full now?" "Yes." "What do you think?" "No, it wasn't full yet." Some of you heard the story. So he reaches down underneath the table and he pulls out a bucket of sand. And he starts sprinkling the sand in the container, shakes the glass a little bit more, shakes some more, and finally the container's full with the sand. And he wipes the hand off the top. He says, "All right, class, are we full now?" "Not yet." Reaching down under the table one more time, and he pulls out a six-pack of beer. And he opens the first beer and starts pouring it in. Not full yet. Opens the second beer and pours it in. Opens the third, opens the fourth. Finally, the sand is saturated with beer. And so he asks the class, "Well, are we full now?" "Yes, we're full now." He said, "All right, well, what is the point of that story, the illustration that we made today?" And up in the front row, you got a couple of kids just bouncing up and down, raising their hand. They know the answer, and they want to tell everybody. But in the back, there's this one slacker who's been slouching the whole time, slowly raises his hand up like that. So the professor says, "I'm going to call on him." "Okay, you in the back, what's the point of the story?" "Well, it just goes to show that no matter how full you are, there's still room for beer." That's the version that I like because it's funny. But the point of that story is you got to put the big rocks in first. That story is a really good story to talk about when you're talking about life. The things in your life that are the big rocks. Your family, your community, your spirituality, your friends. The big rocks are what's important. It's not whether I got there on time or was able to do this or that. It's the big rocks. And the same is true with policy. The same is true with our government in Washington. We gotta fix the big rocks first. If we don't fix the big rocks and lay the right foundation, we're gonna be fighting these little rocks all the time. And a lot of what you read about in the paper, you hear about TV, and some things I'll talk about, the Congressman talk about, are the little ones. We've got to look beyond the trees. We've got to understand what the forest is. That's where the real fight is. It's a long-term fight. Because I can tell you, the people on the other side that believe differently than we believe have long-term strategies and are thinking about the big rocks from their perspective. And if we want this country to be all that it can be, to be all that it has been, and to be proud of it the way all of you are, we need to focus on the big rocks. So independence. Who are independents? Everybody thinks about the oil and gas business as Exxon and Shell and Chevron and BP. And I always figure the reason for that is because that's how we touch it. You know, all of us have a car. We all go fill it up, and we fill it up with some major oil company insignia on it. So you think big oil is oil. Not in the U.S., it's not. Independent oil and gas companies are small businesses. They average 20 or less employees in business, and they drill 90% of the wells in this country. They produce 82% of the natural gas in this country and 68% of the oil. It is independents, many of whom you've never heard of, many of them private. There are some large public company independents, but most of them are private. Over 5,000 independent oil and gas companies across this country in every producing state in America that drill the wells, that produce the oil, produce the natural gas that power this country. And one of our big concerns is the policies that are being espoused today to punish big oil only hurt the independent. And it's the independent that drives the energy business in this country. And we're so ever thankful to have people like Congressman Brady in Congress who understand the independent and fight for us. And he done a terrific job in this past week fighting off some really tough stuff in the Clear Act that was passed by the House. Couldn't get it all out of there, but has done a good job in taking a leadership position there, and I'll let him talk about some of that detail when he gets up here. Before I talk about the moratorium, let me take what I call a timeout for safety. Safety and a safety-first culture is a very challenging thing for businesses to inbreed within the culture of your company. It's a challenge. Every business, whether it's a manufacturing business or whatever, thinks about safety. I can tell you in our business, in our industry, we live and breathe it. And as a company, you have to try to make it instinctive within your people so that they live and breathe safety first. Not just when they're drilling a well and go to a safety meeting. Not a safety meeting. They live and breathe it at home with their families, when they drive a car, and everything that they do, they think safety first instinctively. And I think most of our companies have inbred that in their operations. It's also tragic what happened with the Deepwater Horizon incident. Most of us in the industry are stunned that it did. Virtually all of us never thought that it could happen. Many of us don't believe it should have happened. But one of the things all of us know is that we need to understand exactly what happened before we start devising policy initiatives to correct something. And so it's fundamentally important that we take the time to understand exactly what happened.